walk you through making your own, and you start with very clean utensils and hands, but not fresh out of washing them. You want them to dry off because we don't want any chlorine on them. Also, the water that we're going to use doesn't have any chlorine or fluoride in it. It's filtered water because that will kill the happy little bacteria we're trying to grow. A lot of people who make it in quantity or who want to save the time, run it through a food processor. You can. I'm not a big fan of it because to me it's too soft. I don't like that texture as much because it gets too fine. So I hand chop the way I'm Sherry Fate, and this is Kathy Flume, who's my head chopper since Marin disappeared. So I like the variety of hand chopping it, but one of the things I want to stress is you can make it the way you like it. We've already talked with this gentleman a little bit about, I tend to like it crunchy, so I pull it out of the fermenting. When you put it in the fridge, its process stops, and what you're tasting is what you're going to get. So this is crunchy. If you leave it a couple more weeks, it softens and gets more vinegar to it, and this is a couple weeks longer in the ferment. Once you get it all put together, all you have to do is, after about a week or 5 days, start tasting it. And when it's the point you like it, put it in the fridge. Like a lot of things with really, really simple recipes, the quality of your ingredients is very important. So if you can find farm-raised, local, and organic cabbage, yay. It has a lot more moisture in it. It obviously has less of the bad things, but more moisture is pretty critical to the process. The only ingredients in homemade sauerkraut are cabbage, salt, and water. There's nothing else. It makes its own vinegar. It makes its own probiotics. It has very few calories. Most servings are about 10 calories, yet they have a significant amount of vitamin C and vitamin K. It also provides the same probiotic load that you would get from yogurt, or even higher. You look for sea salt and think you found sea salt. This one won't work. It can have no iodine, but this one has anti-caking chemicals in it. We don't want extra chemicals because we're doing chemistry here. It's a chemical process. You want to look for a salt where the sum total of the ingredients say sea salt. No iodine, no anti-caking chemicals, no additives. For a medium head of cabbage, you use about a tablespoon of sea salt. Measure very carefully. If you like to measure, personally not a fan. And now you're going to massage it. The idea, and for about 10 to 15 minutes, you'll think, why? Absolutely nothing is happening. And nothing will happen the first 10 minutes or so. But what you're doing as you massage the salt into it is you're breaking the cabbage down and it's releasing its natural juices. The more of that you can get to release, the better. How long does this work? 10-15 minutes, which is way longer than you might think when you're standing there massaging it. So we won't make Kathy do it the whole 10-15 minutes. When she does get it going, you'll see some liquid start happening in the bottom. Some purists at this point will put the weight on it, wait 24 hours and see how much fluid it releases. I don't tend to be the most patient, so I go ahead and cover it right now. The secret of it is keeping all of the cabbage underwater. The reason for that is the salinity you're running the water at, which is about 2% of your process, is enough to kill the bad bacteria on the cabbage while nourishing the lactobacillus, which is the good bacteria that makes your gut happy, that makes yogurt and all of those things. So it's what's called a lactoferment, but it exists naturally. So once we get it to that point, we're going to take water. I thought I was picky about the salt. Water can't have any chlorine or any fluoride. I get a bottled drinking water or a bottled distilled water, depending on how much I trust them. For each cup, I add about another teaspoon of salt, stir it up, and cover the cabbage. You want the cabbage to be completely covered. The reason we save the lovely cabbage leaves is we're going to lay them on top.
Can you hold that for me?
And seal it down.
Hold as tight as you can.
And then we will pour water on top of that until the water comes up above the cabbage. That's the whole process. Now what you have to do is wait. There are a number of ways you can do it. This recipe has fermenting in a mason jar. You can ferment in a crock, which Grace graciously demonstrated earlier. I have an actual fermenting jar. Or you can take a gallon freezer bag and fill it about half full of water, stand it on the edge and roll the air out and seal it really tight, and it becomes both your weight and your seal. And you can put that on the counter. You want it not in the sun. Sorry, cabbage. And about at room temp. The nice news is this works pretty well at about house temperature, about 65 to 75. After a week or two, open it up, taste it with a fork. See if you like it. If you like it more vinegary and a little softer, let it continue to ferment. If you like a milder taste and the crunch, put it in the fridge. But you decide when it stops. When you put it in the fridge, you can put it in containers at that time. The fermentation stops, but it's very fridge stable. It will stay in the fridge without deteriorating or changing much for 6 months. I actually like this jar very much because it takes up less room on my counter and it isn't going to spill. But I dropped it, so I'm not putting anything in it. But normally I would put the cabbage in there after a couple days in here, press it down, make sure the fluid comes all the way up to the top, put the weight on top, put this lid, pour a little water in the well, and put this on. It allows it to burp, but it keeps it sealed so you're not getting any outside air. If you're not comfortable or you're not sure you want to invest in equipment yet, my sister has a food business and she's very strict. Never buy a single-use product. So she would do hers in a mason jar. You can use that for anything. You can get a fairly good size. No, I don't. You want to leave it some room so that you can get in there and taste it. And so I usually leave an inch or two.
It has to be glass.
It has to be glass and not metal. Thank you, Jenny, for mentioning that. Not plastic, not metal. It has to be glass. It has to be very inert, so it's not going. The whole process here, you'll notice we're using glass. We're not using any metal. You can again use the cabbage to cover it, put a jelly jar to weight it, fill it with marbles or clean rocks. And put some cheesecake or cloth on top and seal it with rubber band or twine. And then again, don't do anything to it in the meantime. All you're going to do until it's done then is just check on it, see how it's coming along, if you like where it is. And then be very brave. Cabbage is cheap and this is for you. So if you say, hey, I think I'd like caraway seed and dill in mine, try it. What's going to hurt? Or I think I'd like to add some cucumbers and dill. If you like, at this phase, when you're putting it under the water, you can add caraway seed. This batch has caraway in it, just because I have a couple plain batches. You can add dill. While those are the more traditional ones, there is a fun site when you start feeling brave. And remember, cabbage is pretty cheap. There is a fun site called makesauerkraut.com. Not hard to remember. She has the most creative recipes I've ever seen. Everything from meat and ginger kraut to jalapeno, turmeric kraut to dill pickle kraut, and all kinds of directions and tips on how to make them. So it's a fun process. Thekitchen.com, which is what these are out of, has nice basic fermenting recipes. She has very clear directions, list of the supplies you need, list of the ingredients, step-by-step instructions. Feel free to grab one of those and leave it in here or in a crock and it will do just fine. The secret is keep the air out, so you have to keep the slot on top. If when you go to check it you see some foam or some gray on top, don't panic, just scoop it off. It's a natural part of the process. It does not mean anything has spoiled. It's just part of the process, depending on what the bacteria load was like in there to start with. If you're uncomfortable and it's gotten a little more colorful than you feel comfortable with, use your own instincts. Taste it, and if the taste's gone, tell it goodbye and start over. Kathy and I have both contributed whole batches to our compost pile. Another fun thing to do is to make kimchi, which is another step right here. Has a few more ingredients, but actually doesn't take as long. In spite of everyone having a favorite Korean story about burying it in the backyard for the winter, we don't tend to do that so much. That is made the same initial process here, except you're cutting larger strips of either Napa cabbage or bok choy, doing the salt process, letting it sit for a couple days, and then I add in shredded carrots, sliced green onions, shredded cabbage, shredded bok choy, and shredded radish. There's other combinations you can do. That's just my own favorite. Believe it or not, in Hy-Vee and in other places, you can buy a little red bottle about this big that's called gochujang. It's actually a Korean red pepper sauce. It'll say gochujang ketchup. Don't let them kid you, that's not ketchup. It's got some kick to it. If you like a more traditional flavor, early on in the process, when you add the spices and so forth, you can mix in a little fish sauce, and that gives it that sort of umami flavor to it. They traditionally put a little seafood or fish sauce with it. If you are sensitive to that or are a stricter vegetarian, you don't have to do that. It will be just fine with just the gochujang. Mix it together, put enough water to keep it under the weight. This usually is ready in about 5 to 7 days. But again, if you like it softer, if you like it tangier, you can leave it